23 years of marriage ended in a kitchen light. I was holding my wife's silk panties up to fluorescent hum, and the stain looking back at me wasn't mine. I'm Danny Morrison, 44, engineer, habit guy, fix the sink, mow the lawn, kiss her goodnight. I used to believe problems leak. You tighten the valve and move on. But some leaks don't want to be fixed. They want to drown you. I set the underwear on the counter like evidence and felt the floorboards upstairs creak. Her footsteps or just guilt echoing through the house. Emma's away at college. Thank God. No daughter should see her father learn this way. Maybe it's detergent. Maybe I'm crazy. Then I catch the scent. Sweet, laughing at me. My hands start to shake. Not from anger, not yet, but from the certainty that something sacred snapped. One stain, one night. One choice. Confront or find the truth. I chose the truth. That's when the war began. I'm Danny Morrison, 44, a mechanical engineer in a Massachusetts suburb where every lawn looks the same. My neighbors wave as they back their SUVs down driveways, kids ride bikes in perfect circles, and sprinklers tick in the summer dusk. On the surface, my life matched the picture. Two-story colonial, steady job at Hartwell Industries, a daughter in college, and a wife with a smile sharp enough to win courtrooms. But pictures lie. Inside our house, the frames held frozen smiles, while the people inside grew distant. Maggie, my wife, was always at meetings. I was always too tired. Emma, our daughter, left for campus and took whatever warmth was left with her. Still, I told myself this was normal. Every marriage fades a little. Every house creaks when it settles. Until last night, when one piece of silk whispered the truth. And if a single whisper can destroy a home, what else might I find when I start listening? Maggie and I still shared a bed, but it felt more like two strangers renting the same room. She slept facing the wall, phone glowing in her hand long after midnight. I'd reach out sometimes, more habit than desire, and find only cool sheets where her warmth used to be. Conversations shrank to logistics, what time Emma's tuition was due, who'd pick up dry cleaning, whether the mortgage check cleared. The laughter that once filled our kitchen had been replaced by the steady hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock on the wall. Even our touches had rules now. A quick peck before work, a hand on the shoulder when guests were watching. Nothing messy, nothing real. I told myself that's what happens after 2 decades together. Comfort becomes silence. Love becomes duty. But when silence lingers too long, it hides something. And I was about to learn what Maggie was really hiding. It was past 11 when I wandered into the kitchen, beer in hand, trying to drown another restless night. That's when I saw the laundry basket Maggie had left by the counter, her silk blouse, some office clothes, and one thing that didn't belong in the quiet safety of our home, a pair of pale silk panties. I picked them up without thinking, felt the smooth fabric slide between my fingers, and then I saw it. A stain, small but undeniable, catching the fluorescent light like a warning flare. For a second I told myself it was detergent, maybe wine, maybe anything else. But the smell, faint and intimate, told a different story. My chest tightened. 23 years of marriage, and never once had I seen this. Never once had Maggie brought home proof like this. I dropped them back into the basket, my hand trembling, because in that instant I knew I wasn't the only man in my wife's life. I sat at the kitchen table with that beer, staring at the laundry basket like it was wired to explode. Every creak from the upstairs floorboards felt like Maggie pacing, covering her tracks. The hum of the refrigerator sounded louder, heavier, like the house itself was holding its breath with me. I tried to reason it away. Maybe the stain meant nothing. Maybe exhaustion was twisting my mind. But the harder I tried, the louder the doubts became. Why did she look so polished after late trips? Why did her phone always face down on the counter? Why had our bedroom gone so quiet? I rubbed my temples, but the questions kept drilling deeper. 23 years doesn't collapse over a piece of silk, I told myself. And yet, maybe it does. By the time the beer was gone, I wasn't calm. I was shaking. Not from anger, not yet. From fear. Fear that my marriage was already over, and I just hadn't admitted it. By midnight, I couldn't take the guessing anymore. I carried the basket upstairs, but instead of sleep, I ended up at Maggie's desk. Her laptop sat there, closed, humming faintly like it was keeping secrets. I told myself it was wrong, invading her privacy, betraying the little trust we had left. But hadn't she already betrayed me? My hands hovered over the keys, then I typed the only password she ever used, our wedding date. The screen unlocked. Her emails were spotless, too spotless, almost sterile. But tucked in her browser history was a name that froze me. Discreet Meet, a dating app. I clicked, and the profile photo lit up the dark room. Maggie's face, cropped just enough to hide her ring. Successful attorney seeking intelligent conversation and passionate encounters. No strings attached. I slammed the laptop shut, heart pounding. My wife wasn't just distant. She was advertising herself to strangers, and one of them already answered. The cursor blinked like a pulse, taunting me while the profile loaded. Username, Sophisticated Lady 38. Age, occupation, even the headshot, Maggie, without her wedding ring, smiling like she'd never smiled for me in years. Her bio read like a dagger. Successful attorney seeking intelligent conversation and passionate encounters. Discretion essential, no strings attached. I read it twice, then a third time, hoping the words might rearrange themselves into something innocent. They didn't. My wife of 23 years was selling herself as if our vows were nothing more than fine print in a broken contract. I scrolled down. Dozens of messages. Strangers showering her with compliments, emojis, promises of secrecy. My stomach turned. Then one thread stretched longer than the rest. Months of exchanges. The name, Doc Marcus, a physician. Smooth words, late-night plans, hotel bookings. The kind of man who didn't just flirt, he scheduled appointments. And Maggie had shown up for every one. I clicked the thread with trembling fingers. The screen filled with months of messages, private jokes, midnight confessions, words she'd stopped sharing with me years ago. Doc Marcus. Can't wait to see you again. Last time was electric. Sophisticated Lady 38. You make me feel alive, Marcus, like I'm 30 again. My stomach lurched. She never talked to me like that, not in years. Scroll. More messages, photos, cropped tight but unmistakably Maggie. Hair tousled, lips parted in ways I'd forgotten she could smile. Then the most recent exchange. Doc Marcus. Booked the presidential suite at the Boston Marriott, Monday night, no interruptions. Sophisticated Lady 38. I'll bring something special to wear. Or not wear. My throat went dry. Boston. She'd just come back from a conference there. I didn't need a detective to tell me what those nights really were. I needed to decide what kind of man I was going to be now that I knew. I leaned back from the screen, every detail clicking into place like gears grinding in my head. 3 days in Boston, she said. A corporate conference. Late-night calls where her voice was tired but vague. The hotel keycard she'd tossed in the trash when she got home. Now the messages mocked me with their precision. Presidential suite, Monday night. The same dates she was away for work. I opened our joint credit card account. There it was. Charges from the Marriott bar, overpriced room service, champagne. I stared at the numbers until they blurred, wishing they belonged to someone else's life. But they didn't. They were mine. My wife's lies, billed directly to me. I slammed the laptop shut, chest heaving. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This was evidence, hard, undeniable. And as the rage spread, hot and steady, another thought followed close behind. If Maggie could plan her nights with him so carefully, maybe I needed to start planning mine. I reopened the laptop, refusing to let the dark swallow me whole without proof. If there was a chance this was a misunderstanding, I needed to find it. I clicked into her email. At first it was spotless, just client updates and travel itineraries. But buried deeper in the archive, I found them. Auto confirmations. Marriott Boston, presidential suite, 3 nights. Check-in, Monday, 4:00 p.m. Room service, pre-order, champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries. The kind of romance we hadn't touched in years. There were others too. Receipts from a boutique lingerie store downtown, all delivered to her office. She never wore anything new at home. Not for me. My breath caught in my throat. The truth wasn't hidden anymore. It was cataloged, time-stamped, and emailed to her inbox like a ledger of betrayal. My finger hovered over the print button. If she could keep records of her love affair, then so could I, and I'd make sure she couldn't escape them. The house was silent, but the whir of the printer sounded like gunfire in the dark. One page after another slid onto the tray: hotel confirmations, receipts, screenshots of messages. Maggie's smile from her profile stared back at me, frozen on glossy paper like an indictment. My hands shook as I stacked the pages. Each one felt heavier than the last, like evidence bags at a crime scene. This wasn't a fight we could talk our way out of. This was proof. Hard, black and white proof. For a moment I thought about tearing them up, pretending none of it existed. But my body wouldn't listen. My gut knew too well. Once you see the truth, you don't unsee it. By the time the printer fell silent, I had a folder thick with betrayal. And holding it in my hands, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just Maggie's husband anymore. I was her investigator. I stared at the folder on my desk until the walls felt like they were closing in. I couldn't carry this alone. Not anymore. My hands shook as I dialed Jared's number. He answered on the second ring. "Danny, it's midnight, man." My throat was dry. "I found something. About Maggie." Silence, then a low exhale. "Tell me." So I did. The panties, the laptop, the profile, the messages with Marcus, the Marriott. Every word tasted like acid coming out of my mouth. When I finished, Jared's voice was steady, almost too steady. "You sure about all this?" "I've got a stack of proof sitting right in front of me." Another pause. Then he said, "All right, then you've got choices. You can confront her and blow it up tonight, or you can play it smart." I clenched the phone tighter. "Smart?" His tone dropped lower. "Yeah, if you want revenge, Danny, you've got to be strategic." "Listen to me, Danny," Jared said, his voice low, like he was back in the old gym whispering before a fight. "Anger makes you stupid. You charge in now, screaming, throwing punches, you'll lose everything. Maybe even end up in a cell." I pressed a hand to my forehead. "So what? I'm just supposed to sit here while she—" "No," he cut me off. "You move. But you move smart. You want her to feel it? You want him to feel it? Then you don't just swing wild. You take apart their world piece by piece, slow, surgical." His words sank in like ice. My rage wanted fire, immediate and loud. But the part of me that still thought like an engineer knew, designs don't collapse all at once. They fail at stress points. I swallowed hard. "And what if I'm not built for that?" "You are," Jared said. "Because right now, Danny, you've got nothing left to lose." After Jared hung up, the silence in my office felt heavier than any weight I'd ever lifted in his gym. The folder of evidence sat on the desk, pages spilling like shrapnel, each one naming a man who thought he could touch my wife and walk away clean. I stared at their names until they blurred. Marcus, Sullivan, Hayes, Vance, Rodriguez. Strangers, colleagues, rivals, 5 faces stitched into the ruin of my marriage. Jared's words echoed, "Don't get loud, get smart." So I breathed, slow and steady, and something inside me shifted. The panic that had been chewing me hollow was gone, replaced by a cold calculation. I wasn't just the betrayed husband anymore. I was the architect of their collapse. I stacked the papers, slid them into an envelope, and whispered it out loud for the first time, one by one. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but soon. And when I was finished, none of them would recognize the life they'd tried to steal from me. The next evening I told Maggie I had to work late. Instead, I parked a block from her office and waited. My pulse hammered as her BMW slid past, taillights glowing red against the dark. I followed at a distance, headlights off whenever I could, the way I'd seen in movies. She drove straight into the city, weaving through traffic like a woman with purpose. No client dinner, no late-night meeting. My hands tightened on the wheel as she pulled up to the Marriott downtown. I killed the engine across the street and watched her step out, hair perfect, heels clicking on the pavement. She glanced around once, too quick, too practiced, then walked through the revolving doors like she owned the night. I waited, every muscle coiled, until a tall figure in a dark coat appeared behind her. He touched her back, casual, intimate, guiding her inside. My stomach flipped. I didn't need a name to know. That was him. I told myself I was only going to watch, but watching wasn't enough. I walked into the Marriott lobby like I belonged there, heart hammering in my throat. The elevator doors slid shut around me, carrying me to the 15th floor. The hallway smelled of carpet cleaner and secrecy. I knew the room number, saw it flash in her email receipt. Presidential suite. I crept closer, every step loud in my ears. Voices leaked through the door. Laughter. Maggie's laugh. A man's deeper tone answering. My hand shook as I pulled out my phone, snapping a photo of the gold number plate. Proof. Then, footsteps behind me. A bellhop rounded the corner. His eyes flicked to me, suspicious. I forced a smile, muttered, "Lost my way," and kept walking until the elevator doors closed again, sweat dripping down my back. In my pocket, my phone buzzed with the captured photo. Thin proof, dangerous proof, but enough to know she was inside, with him. I lingered in the lobby bar, nursing a drink I couldn't taste, eyes locked on the elevator bank. Minutes dragged like hours until the doors slid open with a soft chime. Maggie stepped out first. Her hair was mussed, her blouse a little crooked, but her smile, God, her smile, was brighter than anything she'd shown me in years. Behind her, he emerged. Marcus. Tall, confident, hand resting on the small of her back like he owned it. Like he owned her. My pulse went wild. I raised my phone under the table, snapped one photo, then another. Each flashless click felt like a gunshot in my chest. She leaned into him, laughing, and he kissed her temple as they walked past, oblivious. I kept snapping, my hands trembling so hard the images blurred. But it didn't matter. The truth was burned into my screen. And worse, burned into me. I drove home with the city lights smearing across the windshield, my heart still thundering from what I'd seen. The photos on my phone burned like hot coals in my pocket, each one a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles whitened. Part of me wanted to turn around, storm back into that hotel, drag them both into the street. But Jared's voice pressed against my rage. Anger makes you stupid. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the storm inside me had shifted. The heartbreak was still there, raw and deep, but layered over it was something sharper, steadier. I spread the photos out on my desk, side by side with the receipts and messages. A timeline of betrayal. And in that timeline, I saw a map. Not of my destruction, of theirs. One by one they'd pay, starting with the man who thought he could touch what was mine. I sat alone in the dark office, the glow of the evidence folder spilling across the desk. Every photo cut deep, but not just because of her betrayal, because I still loved her. I remembered our wedding day, her auburn hair catching sunlight, the way she laughed when I fumbled the vows. I remembered Emma's first steps, Maggie squeezing my hand so tight I thought she'd break it. 23 years of memories, layered like bricks in the house we built together. And then the images on my phone shoved those memories aside. Her lips on another man, her blouse crooked from his touch, her smile brighter than anything she'd shown me in years. Love and hate tangled until I couldn't tell one from the other. My chest ached with both. But in the end, one truth cut through. Love couldn't save what she'd burned. And the only thing left to feel for her now was vengeance. The house was silent, but inside my head the noise was deafening. Memories clashing with the images on my phone, love tangled with disgust until it became something darker. I stood at the window, looking out at the quiet street where neighbors slept peacefully, unaware that my world had already collapsed. On the desk behind me lay the folder, thick with receipts, screenshots, photos. To anyone else it looked like paper. To me, it was ammunition. I pressed my palms against the glass, breathing hard, and whispered the words that sealed my fate. I will destroy every man who touched my wife. Not in a fit of rage, not with fists or blood. I'd do it piece by piece, the way an engineer dismantles a machine, find the weak points, pull them apart, watch the whole system fail. I turned back to the folder, eyes burning. The war had a plan now, and it had just claimed its first target. Detective Ray Sullivan wasn't hard to track down. 3 months of messages told me everything. Tuesdays at the Hilton, drinks at Murphy's Pub afterward. Married, 3 kids, 20 years on the Boston PD. A man who'd sworn to protect people like me while sneaking into my wife's bed. Friday night, I parked outside the pub and watched him through the window. Stocky, square-jawed, scrolling his phone like he was waiting for her to text. I felt the rage bubbling up, but Jared's words echoed, "Don't get stupid, get smart." So I waited, rehearsing the lines in my head, rehearsing the leverage. His wife's number, his captain's name, the photo I'd taken of him and Maggie outside the Hilton. When he finally stood and headed for the restroom, I followed. My heart pounded against my ribs, but my hands were steady now. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about control. The restroom smelled of bleach and stale beer. Sullivan glanced up as the door shut, instantly wary, cop instincts. "Do I know you?" he asked, squaring his shoulders. "Not yet," I said, "but we share a mutual friend, Maggie Morrison." His face drained, eyes hardening. "I don't know what you're talking about." I stepped closer, calm, almost casual. "Sure you do. Hilton, every other Tuesday. Room service, late checkouts. I've got photos, receipts." He shifted, like he was ready to fight, but I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo. Him and Maggie leaving the Hilton, hand brushing her back. For a long second, the only sound was the hum of the fluorescent light. "What do you want?" he finally muttered. I leaned in, close enough to smell the whiskey on his breath. "I want you to disappear from her life. No goodbyes, no excuses. Just gone." His jaw clenched. "And if I don't?" I swiped to another contact, his wife's number, labeled in my phone. "Then she sees everything. So does your captain. You'll lose your badge, your marriage, your kids. And trust me, I won't hesitate." He stared at me, the bravado bleeding out of his eyes. "It wasn't serious," he muttered. "I know," I said, almost smiling. "That's why it ends tonight. Walk away, detective. Forget her." He nodded once, stiff, beaten without a punch thrown. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and walked out, leaving him under the harsh bathroom light. 1 down, 4 to go. Professor Richard Hayes, English Literature, Northeastern University, divorced, no kids. Maggie's longest-running affair, nearly a year. Their messages were full of poems and midnight confessions, the kind of words she'd stopped sharing with me decades ago. One evening, I walked the quiet halls of the English building. The place smelled of chalk and floor polish, the classrooms empty except for a janitor humming down the corridor. Hayes's office light glowed under the door. I paused outside, folder in hand, heartbeat steady now. I wasn't here for answers. I was here for leverage. Through the glass pane, I saw him. Gray hair, wire-rimmed glasses, hunched over a stack of essays, grating with the concentration of a man who thought his world was safe. He didn't know it was about to collapse. I pushed the door open. Hayes looked up, startled. "Office hours are by appointment." "This won't take long," I said, closing the door behind me. "I'm Danny Morrison, Maggie's husband." The pen slipped from his hand. His face went pale. I don't know what you mean." "Don't insult me, Professor. Hilton receipts, messages, credit card charges, all of it right here." I dropped the folder on his desk. He opened it with trembling hands, skimming the pages, his expression collapsing with each one. "How did you get these?" he whispered. "Doesn't matter. What matters is what I do with them." His glasses slid down his nose as he looked up at me, terrified. "What do you want?" I leaned on his desk, close enough for him to smell the sweat of my rage. "You're going to cut her off. No more texts, no more calls, no more hotel rooms. She reaches out, you ignore her. Understand?" He swallowed hard. "And if I don't?" I tapped the folder. "Then these go to your dean, your tenure committee, your students. Imagine your career reduced to ashes. The brilliant scholar, exposed as a middle-aged cliché, screwing another man's wife." His shoulders sagged, the fight gone. "You've made your point." "Have I?" I asked quietly. "Because if you even think about her again, I will destroy you. Completely." He nodded, defeated, shrinking behind his desk like a child waiting for punishment. I picked up the folder, tucking it under my arm. 2 down, 3 to go. Patricia Vance wasn't just another name in Maggie's file. She was a senior partner at a rival firm, Maggie's fiercest competitor in court. Their affair wasn't romance. It was power, dominance, 2 sharks circling in the same tank. I knew I couldn't confront Patricia directly. She was too smart, too connected. But her weakness wore a tailored suit and smiled for cameras. Her husband, Councilman Thomas Vance, a man who built his career on family values speeches and photo ops with his wife at charity dinners. So I bought a ticket to one of those dinners. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and forced laughter, the city's elite patting themselves on the back. I spotted him near the stage, shaking hands, charming donors. When I introduced myself, Danny Morrison, Hartwell Industries, he grinned like I was another voter. He had no idea I was about to hand him the knife that would gut his marriage. We chatted politely for a minute before I leaned in. "Your wife must be proud of your work." He smiled. "Patricia's very supportive. Though she's working late tonight, big case." "Actually," I said, sliding my phone from my pocket, "that's what I wanted to clear up." On the screen glowed a photo, Patricia and Maggie entering a downtown hotel 2 hours earlier, clear as day, unmistakable. His smile froze. Confusion flickered, then rage. "What the hell is this?" "Proof," I said evenly. "Your wife has been having an affair with mine. For months." He grabbed my arm, voice low and dangerous. "You're lying." I swiped through more photos, more receipts. His grip slackened. His eyes, those of a politician who'd built his image on virtue, were filled with panic. "I don't want anything from you," I said, "but you deserve to know who you're married to." Then I left him standing in that golden ballroom, mask cracked, world collapsing. Frank Rodriguez wasn't just another name in Maggie's file. He'd been my supervisor at Hartwell Industries, the man who recommended me for promotions, who stood by me when my father died. For years, he'd been more like family than a boss, and for 6 months, he'd also been sleeping with my wife. I found him at his usual spot, a small deli near the industrial park. Same table, same turkey sandwich, same newspaper folded neatly beside him. For a moment, I almost turned around. Some part of me still wanted to believe Frank was better than this. But betrayal doesn't soften because it comes from someone you trusted more than anyone. I slid into the seat across from him. He looked up, surprised, smiling like old times. "Danny, playing hooky?" I studied his face, every line suddenly foreign. "Something like that, Frank. But I'm here for answers." His smile faltered. "Answers?" I leaned in, voice steady but cold. "How long have you been screwing my wife?" The newspaper slipped from his hands. For a moment, the deli noise drowned out the silence between us. Finally, he whispered, "Danny, 6 months," I cut him off. "Hotel rooms, messages, I've got all of it." He sagged in his chair, suddenly older than his 60 years. It just happened. She was upset you'd been passed over for promotion. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" My voice cracked like glass. "A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday, Frank. You don't meet my wife twice a week for half a year and call it a mistake." He dropped his eyes, shame etched across his face. "I'll end it, whatever it takes. Transfer, resignation, I swear." I stood, shaking. "You were like a father to me. That makes this the worst betrayal of all." Then I walked out, leaving him with his untouched sandwich and his guilt. Dr. Marcus Williams, 42, emergency room physician, divorced, polished, the kind of man who walks into a room and owns it. From the messages, I could tell, he wasn't just another fling. He was the one Maggie had given her whole heart to. That made him dangerous. Unlike the others, he had less to lose, more reason to fight back. And he wasn't just touching my wife. He was trying to replace me. I studied his profile for hours, the smug smile on his hospital's website. He posted about saving lives, giving back to the community, the perfect family man. Behind it all was the truth. Hotel suites, champagne, stolen nights with another man's wife. The others were pawns. But Marcus? He was the king. And to win this game, I had to topple the king. I spread the evidence across my desk. Marriott receipts, time-stamped emails, the photos I'd snapped of them leaving the hotel. Maggie's hair tousled, Marcus's hand on her back. Each piece was solid, undeniable. But solid wasn't enough. I needed devastating. I needed to hit him where it would destroy him completely. So I dug deeper. I found her lingerie receipts, all billed on the days she attended conferences. I matched them with Marcus's calendar. medical conferences that didn't exist, nights when he was conveniently on call but never showed. The pattern was perfect, a net tightening around him. I printed everything, labeled it, built a case like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Except this wasn't going to court. It was going to the one place Marcus couldn't afford exposure, his hospital. Doctors live and die by their reputation. Patients trust them with their lives. Boards trust them with their licenses. Marcus's resume was spotless, published in journals, speaking at conferences, respected by peers. But buried in all that shine was a flaw. Every institution fears scandal. Hospitals don't gamble on men who mix personal lives with professional ethics. A doctor sleeping with a patient, even if consensual, was poison. I pictured the chief of staff reading Maggie's profile, the messages, the hotel bills. For professionals seeking sophisticated companionship. The phrase itself was enough to hang him. Marcus thought he'd found excitement. He thought Maggie was just a game. But I was about to remind him what happens when a man plays games with another man's wife. You don't just lose the game, you lose everything. I walked into New England Medical Center with a manila envelope tucked under my arm. The lobby smelled like antiseptic and fear, the way all hospitals do. At the front desk, I asked for the chief of staff. 10 minutes later, I was ushered into a corner office where Dr. Patricia Chen sat behind a wide desk, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. "Mr. Morrison," she said, "how can I help you?" I set the envelope down between us. "This concerns one of your physicians, Dr. Marcus Williams." She raised an eyebrow. "What about him?" "An ongoing affair with my wife, documented. Hotel receipts, messages, photos. He's been meeting her under the pretense of medical conferences. I thought you should know." Her lips pressed into a hard line as she opened the envelope, page by page. With every photo, every receipt, her expression grew colder. "This is serious, Mr. Morrison," she said at last. "If true, it's a violation of policy and medical ethics." Dr. Chen closed this folder and looked up at me, her voice clipped. "We'll conduct an internal investigation immediately. Dr. Williams will be suspended pending review." Suspended. Just like that, the king was off the board. I nodded, forcing calm even as adrenaline surged through me. "I'll provide copies of everything for your records." She gave me a firm handshake, her eyes already calculating the fallout. "If what you've shown me checks out, Mr. Morrison, Dr. Williams's license could be in jeopardy. Thank you for bringing this to our attention." I walked out of the hospital lighter than I'd felt in months. By evening, Marcus would be fielding questions he couldn't answer, facing walls he couldn't climb. His career, his identity, was crumbling. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. A message from Maggie. "Something happened at the hospital. Marcus was suspended. Can you believe it?" I stared at the screen, a bitter smile twisting my lips. Believe it? I made it happen. That night, Maggie was pacing the bedroom, phone glued to her hand. Her face was pale, her movements sharp like a caged animal. "Something's wrong," she said, more to herself than to me. "Marcus got suspended today. Some kind of ethics complaint. He won't answer my calls. No one at the hospital will tell me anything." I leaned in the doorway, arms folded, forcing my expression into concern instead of the smile clawing its way up my throat. "That's terrible," I said softly. "I thought he was one of the good ones." She shot me a look, suspicious, then shook her head. "It doesn't make sense. He was careful. He wouldn't risk something like this." Her phone buzzed again. She grabbed it, checked, cursed when it wasn't him. I stepped closer, resting a hand on her shoulder. She flinched, then let it stay. "You've still got me," I murmured. She had no idea just how true that was. I waited until Maggie sat down at the kitchen table, her nerves frayed from Marcus's silence. Without a word, I reached into my folder and slid a single photo across the wood. She froze. It was her and Marcus outside the Marriott, his hand on her back, her blouse slightly undone. The timestamp glared in the corner like a brand, her face drained of color. Where did you get this?" I kept my tone calm, measured. "Does it matter? You lied. Boston wasn't a conference, was it?" She opened her mouth, closed it again, searching for air. Finally, a whisper. "Danny, I can explain. I leaned in, eyes locked on hers. Don't. I've got more. Much more. Emails, receipts, photos. Her hands trembled as she shoved the picture back toward me. Please, don't show Emma. Don't ruin this. I tucked the photo away, my voice low. Then you'd better start realizing, Maggie. Your lies are no longer yours to control. Maggie's hands flew to her face, shoulders shaking. Tears streaked her cheeks, dripping onto the table, smearing the edge of the photo I hadn't yet put away. I'm sorry, Danny, she choked out. I never meant for it to go this far. Please, please don't destroy us. Don't destroy me. Her voice cracked on that last word, raw and trembling. For a moment, the sight almost pierced through the armor I'd built. This was the woman I married, the mother of my child, broken and begging. But then I remembered the hotel rooms, the lies, the way she smiled for him, a smile I hadn't seen in years. I folded the photo neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and looked her dead in the eyes. You want forgiveness? I said quietly. That's not what I'm here for. Her sobs grew louder, but I felt nothing. Only the cold satisfaction of knowing fear had finally replaced her lies. The next morning I laid a stack of papers on the dining table. The sunlight through the blinds cut sharp stripes across them, cold, sterile, unavoidable. Maggie walked in, her eyes swollen from crying all night. She stopped when she saw the documents. What is this? Divorce, I said simply. You're going to sign. Quietly. No drama. No fight. Her lip trembled. Danny, we can fix this. Counseling, therapy. I slid an envelope across to her. Inside were the rest of the photos, the receipts, the messages. Her hand shook as she opened it, her breath catching at every page. You fight me, I said evenly, and these go public. Your firm, your friends, Emma, everyone sees who you really are. She clutched the papers, eyes darting from me to the evidence, panic flooding her face. You wouldn't, she whispered. I leaned in, voice flat. Try me. That night the house was too quiet. I dozed on the couch, folder on my chest like a shield. Sometime past midnight, I heard drawers sliding, the creak of closet doors, the faint rustle of suitcases. I didn't move. Through half-closed eyes I saw her shadow cross the hallway, dragging pieces of a life she no longer owned. She paused at the front door, shoulders trembling, then slipped out into the dark. No goodbye, no last words. By morning, her side of the closet was bare. The scent of her perfume clung to empty hangers, mocking me. The bed looked wider, colder. For the first time in 23 years, I drank my coffee alone, and for a fleeting moment, I felt something like peace. But peace was an illusion. Maggie leaving wasn't the end of this war. It was only the beginning. The phone rang mid-morning. Emma's name lit the screen, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. My daughter. My anchor. But the second I answered, her voice cut like glass. Dad, what the hell are you doing to Mom? My chest tightened. What did she tell you? That you've been stalking her, threatening her co-workers, destroying people's lives. She says you've lost your mind. I gripped the phone so hard it creaked. Emma, that's not true. Your mother, she's been lying to you. She's been lying to me for years. Silence, then a bitter laugh. You're just trying to make her look bad. She's the one holding this family together while you spiral. Her words stung more than any evidence I'd ever gathered. Maggie had reached her first, poisoned the well. Emma, please, I whispered. Just listen. But the line went dead, and for the first time I realized I hadn't just lost a wife. I was losing my daughter too. I drove 2 hours to Emma's campus, folder on the passenger seat like a loaded gun. She agreed to meet me at the student union, but the second she saw me, her eyes were cold. Dad, this isn't a good time, she said, arms folded, backpack slung over one shoulder. Make time, I answered, laying the folder on the table between us. You need to see the truth. She recoiled. Mom warned me you'd do this, that you'd try to drag me into your obsession. It's not obsession, Emma. It's evidence. Photos, receipts, messages. She's been lying to both of us. Her jaw tightened. "You sound crazy. You sound dangerous." I opened the folder, slid a photo across, Maggie and Marcus at the Marriott. Emma glanced, then pushed it back like it burned. "That doesn't prove anything." My voice cracked. "It proves everything." Her eyes flashed, tears forming. "Even if it's true, Dad, why destroy everything? Why ruin people's lives? Why not just walk away?" I slammed my palm on the table, the folder rattling. "Because they ruined mine first. Your mother gave herself to 5 different men and handed me disease and lies. You think I can just forgive that?" Students turned to stare, but Emma didn't flinch. "Maybe you should have. Maybe you should have been better instead of turning into this monster." The word cut deeper than any knife. I lowered my voice, leaning in. "I did everything for this family. Everything. And she spat on it. Don't you dare blame me for fighting back." Emma shook her head, standing. "I don't recognize you anymore." She left me sitting there, surrounded by proof no one wanted to see. And for the first time, I wondered if the truth itself had become my enemy. The courtroom smelled of dust and stale coffee, but the air crackled with hostility. Maggie sat across from me, flawless in a navy suit, her lawyer at her side like a viper ready to strike. "Your Honor," David Chen began, "my client has endured months of harassment, surveillance, threats, defamation. Mr. Morrison has destroyed reputations, jeopardized careers. This isn't justice, it's obsession." I clenched my fists under the table, my own attorney pressing a calming hand against my arm. When it was her turn, she spoke coolly. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Mrs. Morrison engaged in repeated infidelity, exposed her husband to disease, and violated the core of their marriage. The trauma inflicted on my client is immeasurable." The judge's gavel cracked, cutting through the noise, but my eyes never left Maggie's. She stared back with a mask of sorrow, convincing to everyone but me. The papers on the bench weren't the end. They were only another battlefield. When the judge read the final decision, I should have felt triumphant. I kept the house, my retirement, most of what mattered financially. Maggie walked away with her car, a fraction of our savings, and a lawyer's bill that would bleed her dry. On paper, I'd won. But when the gavel fell, the sound echoed like a coffin lid slamming shut. Maggie didn't look at me as she left the courtroom. She didn't have to. She'd already taken the only thing that mattered. Emma. My daughter hadn't shown up. She hadn't called. The silence between us stretched wider than any legal settlement. I gathered the papers, the ink still fresh, but the victory felt like ash in my hands. I'd beaten her in court. I'd crushed her lovers one by one. And yet, sitting there in the empty chamber, I felt more alone than ever, because you can win every battle and still lose the war that counts. Murphy's pub was half empty, the air heavy with stale beer and muted laughter from the back. I sat nursing a drink I couldn't taste when the door opened and in walked a ghost I thought I'd buried. Marcus Williams. But this wasn't the polished doctor from Maggie's emails. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, dark circles carved under his eyes. He scanned the room, spotted me, and strode over with a hatred that could cut steel. "You," he spat, sliding into the seat across from me without asking. "You destroyed my life." I studied him calmly. "No, Marcus. You did that when you decided to touch my wife." His laugh was bitter, hollow. "You think you won, don't you? Took my license, my job, my family, but you haven't won anything." I leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Then tell me, Marcus, what do you think you've got left?" His smile was slow, venomous, and the words he said next made my stomach drop. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a cruel grin twisting his face. "Maggie called me last week. She's 3 months along." The words hit harder than any punch. My hand froze around the glass, the bar noise fading into a dull roar. "You're lying." His eyes gleamed. "Am I? She says it's mine. We never stopped seeing each other, even after you thought you scared me off. Different hotels, more careful. You destroyed my career, but she still came back to me." My pulse pounded in my ears. The room spun. Maggie, pregnant, carrying his child. I forced the words through clenched teeth. If you're trying to break me, it won't work. Marcus stood, adjusting his wrinkled jacket. You can burn my license, my reputation, but you can't stop this. Maggie and I are going to have a family, and there's nothing you can do about it. He walked out, leaving me staring at the empty glass, and for the first time I felt truly powerless. I sat frozen at the bar long after Marcus left, his words circling my head like vultures. Pregnant, 3 months, his child. The ice in my glass had melted, but my hand still shook as if I were holding thunder. Around me, laughter and jukebox music blurred into static. None of it felt real. No, it couldn't be. Not after everything I'd uncovered, everything I'd destroyed. Maggie wouldn't still be with him. She couldn't. But the photo in my mind, their bodies tangled in that hotel suite, kept clawing back. My stomach twisted. I whispered to myself like a prayer, like a curse. She wouldn't do this. The bile rose in my throat. Only one way to know for sure. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over her number. My chest burned as I pressed call. If Marcus's words were true, I wasn't just betrayed anymore. I was erased. The phone rang twice before Maggie answered, her voice guarded. Danny, why are you calling me? I didn't waste time. Is it true? A pause, sharp as a blade. Is what true? Don't play games. Are you pregnant? The silence stretched, every second pressing down on my chest. Then softly, how did you find out? My grip tightened on the phone. So it's real? Yes. I swallowed hard. And it's his? Another pause. A shaky breath. Yes. Marcus is the father. The world tilted. The bar disappeared. All that remained was her voice, calm and resolute, while mine cracked with rage. After everything, Maggie, after the lies, the affairs, the divorce, you still chose him. I didn't choose him, Danny. I chose myself. And now I'm choosing our future. The line went dead quiet. And in that silence, something inside me finally broke. I sat in my car outside the bar, phone still warm in my hand, her voice echoing like a curse. Yes, Marcus is the father. It felt like dying twice. The first collapse had come months ago when I found the evidence of betrayal. But this was worse. This was permanent. Proof that my 23 years with Maggie had been erased, overwritten by another man's bloodline. I stared at the steering wheel until the leather blurred. My chest felt hollow, my hands numb. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, but it could have been inside my head. She wasn't just gone, she was reborn, carrying his future, while I was left clutching the ashes of mine. I thought revenge had ended with the divorce, with Marcus stripped of his license. But now I understood. That was only the beginning. The war hadn't ended. It had just found its second life. The morning after Maggie's confession, I sat across from Sarah Mitchell, my divorce attorney. Her office smelled of paper and stale coffee, walls lined with case files. Hypothetical question, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. If my ex-wife has a baby with another man, what rights does he have? Sarah frowned. If his name's on the birth certificate, he's the legal father. Custody, support, the works. Why do you ask? Just curious, I lied. She studied me, suspicion flickering in her eyes. Danny, don't do anything reckless. You've been through enough. I forced a smile. Of course. But as I walked out with her warnings ringing in my ears, my mind was already racing. Marcus thought Maggie's pregnancy was his redemption, his fresh start. But I was going to make sure the child he pinned his hopes on became the weight that dragged him under. Marcus was no longer a doctor. The medical board had suspended his license indefinitely. I tracked him through public records, social media, scraps of gossip. He was working now as a pharmaceutical sales rep, small apartment downtown, used Honda in place of his BMW. A man who once held life and death in his hands now spent his days pushing pill samples to clinics. His finances were bleeding. Divorce had stripped him bare, alimony, child support, legal fees. The new job barely kept him afloat. He was already drowning, but Maggie was still clinging to him, believing love would save them both. That gave me an opening. Fragile men break faster when they're trying to hold someone else up. I collected his new address, his employer's name, his probation officer's number. Every detail was a weapon waiting to be used. Marcus had built his house of cards on Maggie's belly, and I was going to blow it down. Back in my study, the folder on Marcus grew thicker. Employment records, probation terms, even whispers of an investigation into his new company's shady drug trials. Jared's words echoed in my head. You want revenge, you hit them where it hurts. Money, pride, reputation. Marcus had already lost pride. Now it was time to take the rest. Step 1. Poison his employer with the truth. Let them know their salesman once lost his medical license for ethics violations. Step 2. Dig into his insurance filings. Every receipt, every claim. Fraud always leaves a trail. Step 3. Feed his probation officer exactly what he didn't want to hear. Alcohol, violence, violations. Piece by piece, Marcus would crumble. Job gone, finances gone, freedom gone. And while Maggie struggled to carry his child alone, he'd rot behind bars, powerless to protect them. I whispered to the empty room, a vow colder than steel. You took my family, Marcus. Now I'll take yours. It started with a phone call. I'd sent Marcus's employer a neat package. Hospital suspension letters, news clippings, copies of his dating app profile. Nothing fabricated, just the raw, ugly truth. I made sure it landed on the desk of their compliance officer. By Friday, Marcus was summoned into HR. I wasn't there, but I imagined the scene. Him in a cheap suit, clutching a coffee he couldn't drink, listening as they used words like liability and ethics violations. That afternoon, his employee badge was deactivated. By Monday, an internal memo announced he was no longer with the company, but it didn't stop there. The material I'd slipped about MedTech Solutions, their questionable drug trials, had reached the state regulators. Investigators opened a file, and Marcus's name was stamped all over it. 1 blow, 2 wounds, his paycheck gone, his reputation bleeding again. I poured myself a drink that night, whispering to the empty house. Checkmate, doctor. The insurance commission moved faster than I expected. Fraud leaves a paper trail, and Marcus had been sloppy, claiming Maggie as a dependent, bending rules he thought no one would notice. I just gave the investigators a map. 3 months later, I sat in the back of a county courtroom, watching as the gavel came down. Guilty. Probation revoked. Sentence: 6 months in county jail. When the deputies cuffed him, Marcus turned his head, scanning the crowd. His eyes locked on me for a split second, burning with hate. I didn't look away. Outside, the prison gates clanged shut behind him, steel echoing across the yard. Maggie was 6 months pregnant, left alone, broke, terrified. For the first time in over a year, I allowed myself to breathe. The king was off the board, the queen abandoned. I thought I'd finally won. But victories like mine never last. They rot. The call came late, Maggie's number lighting up my phone like a ghost from the past. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Her voice was raw, trembling. Danny, please, I need help. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. Help with what? She sniffled, tried to steady herself. The rent's overdue. The baby's coming soon. Marcus is in jail and I can't do this alone. For a moment, I pictured her, 6 months pregnant, pacing a dark apartment, clutching her belly while fear clawed at her. You should have thought of that before, I said flatly. Please, she whispered, her voice cracking. This isn't about me. It's about the baby, an innocent child. The word innocent stung, but I let the silence stretch, savoring her helplessness. She was cornered, stripped of every shield, and for the first time in years, Maggie Morrison was exactly where I wanted her. Her sobs cracked through the phone, each one a jagged nail scraping at my ears. Danny, I'm begging you, just a little money, groceries, rent, please, for the baby's sake. I stared out the window at the quiet street, houses lit warm and safe, the same illusion I once lived in. You want my help? I said, voice steady as stone. Here it is. Live with what you chose. Every affair, every lie, every time you walked into a hotel room instead of coming home. Danny, don't. No, I cut her off. The consequences are yours, Maggie. You built this life. Now you get to choke on it. On the other end, silence, then a low, broken sob that sounded less like the wife I once knew and more like a stranger caught in her own trap. I ended the call without another word. For the first time, she understood. There would be no mercy. The next day, Emma called, her voice sharp, trembling with rage. Dad, what the hell is wrong with you? I closed my eyes. What did she tell you now? She's pregnant, alone, broke, and you just left her there? She begged you for help and you told her to choke on it? My jaw clenched. Emma, she made her choices. She destroyed our family. She's still my mother, Emma shouted. And that baby, God, Dad, it's innocent. You're punishing a child for her sins. Her words sliced deep, deeper than I wanted to admit. You don't understand. No, I understand perfectly, she snapped. You've turned into a monster. You don't care about anyone but your revenge. The line crackled with her furious breathing, then went dead. I sat frozen, phone in hand, realizing Maggie had poisoned her again, this time with truth instead of lies. And maybe, just maybe, Emma would never forgive me. It came through Emma, just a single text. No words, just a picture. A newborn swaddled in a pale blue blanket, eyes closed, face red and wrinkled but impossibly small. Maggie's son. Marcus's son. They'd named him Daniel. The irony twisted like a knife. My name. My ghost stamped on a child who wasn't mine. I stared at the screen until my hands went numb. By all accounts, I should have felt rage or triumph or at least satisfaction that Maggie now had to raise him alone. Instead, there was nothing. Just a vast, cold emptiness. Months of plotting, of tearing lives apart, of watching enemies fall, yet none of it filled the crater inside me. That tiny, innocent face should have stirred something human. Love, compassion. But it didn't. And that terrified me more than betrayal ever had. Because I realized, staring at that photo, that I'd lost more than a marriage. I'd lost myself. The house was silent, the kind of silence that pressed against the walls like a weight. I sat alone in my office, the folder of evidence still on my desk. Every photo, every receipt, every scrap of proof that I'd turned into weapons. I'd won. I'd stripped Maggie of her lovers, her career, her dignity. I'd put Marcus behind bars, shattered his reputation, and watched him lose everything. But in winning, I'd burned down my own life. Maggie was gone. Emma hated me. Even the newborn, carrying another man's name and blood, had stolen whatever chance I had at feeling whole again. I stared at the photo on my phone one last time, the tiny face of a child who should have meant nothing, but instead revealed the truth. I wasn't a husband anymore. I wasn't even a father. I was just the ghost of a man built from revenge. And as the night pressed in, a whisper rose inside me. The war is not over yet. It has just begun.